So I'm going to paint the brackets, the wing brackets that protrude. We've got these brackets that are just inside the wing. No one will see them. I just sprayed those with zinc phosphate. All these brackets you see right here, they have one or two parts that protrude from the wing. So this will be for the interplane strut wire and the flying wires. Same with those brackets. Flying wire, interplane strut. I think that's right. I think these are just lower wing, outboard. These are for the interplane strut, and so on and so forth. So all these brackets you see here have a part or parts that protrude from the wing. So what I'm going to do with these is paint them using my final paint process that I'll use for the whole airplane. I'm going to use polyfiber for finishing the plane. So I'm going to use their paints, primers, chemicals, for attaching the fabric and so on and so forth. So I've got their primer, I've got some of their paint. Actually, I don't have the paint yet that I'm going to use for these, but I have the primer and another chemical that I used before the primer. So this is my process. I created the brackets and used the belt sander to give them the shape. And now I'm just using a fine sandpaper. What is this? 320. And I use that. So here's one that I haven't done yet. The edges are sharp. There's burrs a little bit around the holes. Instead of using a file or the belt sander or something like that, I like to use this fine sandpaper and hit all the edges, hit the holes, and because it gets rid of the burr, but it leaves me a really crisp square edge. It doesn't take the edge off. And I love that nice crisp edge. I think it's going to give a really professional look when I'm done. This one I haven't done yet. These I have. These I've actually blasted over there in my blast cabinet, and all I've got is glass beads. I'm not sure it matters too much what you use, but I've got glass beads. So I blasted all these just to help get rid of scratches and give it a nice even surface and clean it up. The book I've got from Polyfiber, it's a little bit difficult to follow and maybe inconsistent in some places, but it seems like one place it says you can use a chemical to clean these up, but I don't have that chemical. What I'm doing instead, and that's just like to get oil or grease or whatever off of them so they're clean for the next step, I'm just blasting them, which should make it nice and clean, and then I'll just wash that off with water. Then I'll use a chemical called allodyne, and that's what I think there they said you could use maybe another chemical or maybe no chemical at that point. But in one place they say allodyne makes a really great base for primer. So I'll do that next after I get these blasted, get this sanded and blasted. I'll rinse all these with water. Then I'll use the allodyne to treat them, and it'll turn them yellow. I'll just soak them in that, diluted with 2 parts water to 1 part allodyne, or you can just paint it on and keep it wet for like 5 minutes. I'll just mix it up and dump them in there and soak them for 5 minutes. It turns them yellow, makes them corrosion resistant, and makes a great base for primer. I'll do that. Then you wash that off with water, dry them. Then I'll hang them up, and I'll use my brand new Techna copper spray gun. And I've never done any painting like that before, so that'll be kind of fun. That came yesterday, and all the chemicals came the day before. And today then I'll just spray on the epoxy primer on top of the allodyne. And that takes 7 days to cure fully. And I just wanted to verify my plans with Polyfiber, and Greg there always responds super fast. He got back and he said, your plan's good. And he did verify that I need to wait for the full epoxy to cure, the full epoxy cure, which is 7 days. You can handle them like after an hour, but the full cure is 7 days at 70 degrees. So I'll put them in the house in a spare bedroom with the heat on and leave them in there for a week at 70 plus. And then next weekend, hopefully I'll have the paint. It hasn't come yet. And then I'll spray all these with my final color. And one thing that's important to note, with Polyfiber, you do not put clear coat over the color. I ordered a gallon of clear coat, $215. Then as I was reading their documentation, it said, after you paint them, you're done. You do not put clear coat over the color. And I don't know if Aircraft Spruce will take it back. They told me they wouldn't, but Greg at Polyfiber said he'd try to get them to take it back. Anyway, so if you're just going to paint colors, don't get clear. Unless you just want something not to have color on it and have the paint, then you just use clear. So I've got my primer, got the Aladyne, and that's what we'll be doing here shortly. And then next weekend, after the epoxy is cured, hopefully I'll have the color, and I'll spray paint all these with the color. Then I'll be able to continue assembling my wing. I'm stuck now because I want these to be all painted and ready to go before I put them in the wing. So I can't really put my wing together until I have these painted. Specifically those and these two and those two. Then I can go ahead and continue. Those will go there, and two there. Then I can continue putting the wing together and move on to subsequent wings after I get this wing finished. So hopefully it'll start to go quicker once I get these brackets painted, and I can get the wings built pretty quickly. There's leading edge material there that I'm attempting to form. Alright, finish these up and then we'll move ahead with the Aladyne treatment. Aladyne 1201, conversion coating chemical for aluminum. It's visible, provides long-lasting paint adhesion, protects against corrosion, blah blah blah. Okay, so in the instructions here, this is where I read part of what I read, not the Polyfiber instructions. So what you can do is use Alum Prep 33 for cleaning. After that, you rinse it with water. I don't have that, so I just blasted it in my blast cabinet with glass beads, and then I rinse it with water. It should be totally clean. They want you to have a chemically clean and corrosion-free aluminum surface. The blasting should accomplish that. Clean it with water. Then what you can do, you can brush this stuff on, just using a brush, and make sure the surface stays wet for 2 to 5 minutes. So brush it on probably multiple times. Or you can immerse it. Yeah, this just describes the brushing process. Let's see, where does it say? Anyway, it says someplace that you can soak it at a ratio of 2 parts water to 1 part Aladyne. Except it says 67 parts water. It says for each 100 parts, 67 parts Aladyne to 33 parts water. Immersion. For each 100 parts of bath, mix 33 parts Aladyne and 67 parts water. You'd think they just say 2 to 1 ratio. But anyway, 2 to 5 minutes is the time it's got to be exposed to it. So I'll just dump water in there, or dump water in the Aladyne in just using a cup, just to get the proper ratio. And then we'll let it sit a few minutes. I'll put gloves on first because I think this is supposed to be a nasty chemical. And then I'll just jostle the parts around to make sure that the chemical gets in between all of them. Because if they're up against each other, they might seal out the Aladyne, and I want it to get everything contacted real well. Oh, here are all my rinsed parts. Alright, so I put 6 of those cups of water in here. I thought that might be enough to help me cover what I've got in here. So that means 3 cups of this stuff. Give me 2 to 1. 1. 2. It looks like it's going to cover it. 3. So try to make sure it gets into all the cracks and crevices. I don't know if I'm succeeding or not. Alright. Alright, it's covered. So I'll come back maybe in 1 or 2 minutes and jostle it some more. I'm going to let it sit another few minutes. Alright, so I got all these hung on the ceiling. I screwed this big stick, if it was long enough to reach between these studs, screwed it in there, and then what I can do is I could take a little bit smaller stick. I probably could have just done this straight to the ceiling, but I routed a little groove right there and routed another little groove right there. So basically what I do is I take this stick, shove it onto that screw, and then pivot this end in, and it locks on. So basically, when I'm done, I need to take all these in the house where it's warmer and let them cure. I'll just pivot this end of the stick out towards me, and then the whole thing slide it out to the left, and it'll come off of that screw. Then I can just carry this thing upstairs to the warm spare bedroom. And I just drilled a bunch of holes in there and cut bits of hanger and hung all those on there. It's going to be tricky to paint this because you got to do the sides and there's not really enough space. I got to shoot between the hangers there, which may not make a big difference. But then I got to get these edges too, because that corner, these little corners sticking out, that corner, these corners, those two corners right there and there, those are all the ones that are going to be visible to the outside world. Those are the ones that really need the good finish. The inside part of it isn't that important, but these bits that stick out, I need a good finish on those. So that'll be the hard part, I think. And I'll have to shoot from both sides. That's no big deal. I'll shoot this side and then walk around to the other side and shoot it again. And I think one thing that'll help will be, I mean, since I'll need to hit them from this side and hit them from this side and maybe hit them from below a little bit just to get these corners, and then obviously hit them from the side. Since I'll need to hit them from so many angles, I'm thinking one of the key things will be to make sure the paint's not coming out too thick from the gun. Otherwise I'm just going to get it on super heavy and it'll be runny and end up terrible. So have the paint come out kind of light so I can hit it from several angles and not get it on too thick. I think that's going to be key. But I don't have a clue about painting, so I'm just guessing that that might help it come out better. So over here I've got the, let's see, epoxy primer, white, because yellow is going to be going on top, so I want it to be light primer. They got green primer as well. Primer catalyst, and then epoxy thinner. And use this for epoxy varnish, and for the epoxy primer, and probably for the paint too, I'm not sure. And the way, I think probably all of Polyfiber's products are the same in this respect, I'm not positive, but the varnish and this are the same, the epoxy primer. It's 2 parts base to 1 part catalyst, then you let it sit for a half hour, and then 2 parts that to 1 part thinner. So it's 2 to 1, and then 2 to 1 again. And I bought a bunch of these little mixing cups, which are pretty cool, but I don't think it has the 2 to 1 and then 2 to 1 again. So I think what I'll need to do is just use this manual scale. So I think what I'll do, I think this will be plenty, is just use the milliliters here, and I'll just use each notch as 1 unit. So 2 units of the base to 1 unit of catalyst, and then all of that will count as 2 units to 1 unit of thinner. So the unit in that case would be 37.5. So 2 units is 75 to 1 unit of thinner would be 37.5. So halfway up between the 100 and 125. So 50 of the base, 25 of the catalyst, mix it together, let it sit a half hour. Then 37.5 would be 2 to 1 again with the thinner. Mix it, put it in the gun, and go. But I'll want to spray a test pattern and adjust the gun a little bit first, since I've never done this. And then I'll spray. Piece of cake, maybe. So I ordered this giant roll, 12 feet by 400 feet, of super lightweight plastic. And you cut off a piece of it, and it unfolds to be huge. Well, 12 feet wide, I guess. And so I'm just covering stuff that's in the vicinity of where I'm going to paint. I'm going to paint over the top of my table saw and router table. My wing here is off to one side, and then I'm going to put the last piece over there, because I'll be painting in that direction, and then I'll be painting in this direction, and over the top of this. So that's good enough. If I get some paint on other stuff, I don't care too much. So we're getting close to being set up. This needs to sit a few more minutes, and then I'll mix some thinner in, and I'll get this last piece of plastic up, and then test out my mask, and then I think I'll be pretty close to doing it. So here's my fresh air breathing system. You got a mask, and it's pretty lightweight until you get to this hose, which is heavy. And they give you a belt here, so you wrap this around your waist, and it supports the heavy hose, and then you just drape this over your back, over your shoulder, so that there's not much weight pulling on this guy, so it keeps a good seal and doesn't annoy your face. And this is pretty long. It's probably more than 20 feet, I don't remember. It comes out here, and it's just a little gizmo here with a short little power cord and a little filter there. You just want to get it far enough away from where you're painting so that it has a fresh air supply. And then it's got an on-off switch, and I guess that's just a fuse or a breaker. And so let's turn it on and check it out. It sounds a little loud right here, but when you're 20 or 30 feet away in the garage, I think you're hardly going to hear it at all. So that's that. Anyway, so when we come in the garage, that's all you get. Yeah, there's fresh air coming out of there. I don't know what the whistling is. Alright. Maybe it's just the air going past some of the surfaces there. But once it's on all the way, I think the whistling goes away and you get good fresh air, and then when you breathe out, it forces it out the side here. It was blowing on the plastic there. So that's pretty cool. Let me put the camera down and actually try to get this thing on properly. There goes nothing. Alright, I don't have a clue if this is set right, but I think it's okay. The fan's about that big, and it doesn't seem super wet. Maybe a tiny bit wetter than I want it for as many passes as I think I may have to do. So let's turn the paint supply down just a hair. Alright, let's see what happens here. Alright, so the paint is actually going much faster than I thought it would, so I'm going to have to mix some more, which I'll start on right now. I got to wait maybe 15 minutes between coats, 2 more coats to go. This won't be enough paint, but even though I need to wait 30 minutes for the paint to be ready, for the primer to be ready to add the thinner, I've got some time between coats that I can wait, so I'll mix it now, and well, it won't quite be ready. Actually, I guess it'll be ready in time for the 3rd coat, so I'll mix that right now and continue on. I don't know if it's going perfectly, but it probably could be worse. There we go. My first paint job. priming my wing fittings. First paint job with my new spray gun. The only spray gun I've ever owned. Turned out mediocre. Part of the problem, I think, is how I hung them. I need more space between them to be able to get at the different angles and get those protrusions without getting paint on adjacent brackets. That just ends up getting too much paint in some spots, and you can't control that when the brackets are all so close together. So I'll definitely hang them different when I paint, hopefully in a week. So there's spots, and some spots look great, but other spots I got too much paint on and it's kind of collected, pooled up. It's not focusing, but oh, there you go. It's pooled up there and pooled there. But you're supposed to scuff them then before you paint them in a week. And this is epoxy primer, so it should dry nice and hard. So maybe I can knock those high spots off. I should be able to. So I'll plan on doing that so I have a nice flat surface to start with, and hopefully I can do a better job with the paint. But I do think I got the edges on all of them. That's important. Those are the parts that are gonna show, so I think those are okay. Anyway, probably could have been worse, but certainly could have been better. But not a catastrophe, I guess, for my first time doing this. So, but like I said, hopefully the paint job turns out better. So here's my new gun. Pretty cool, and I'm pretty sure that it's capable of a way better job than I just did with it. And I just used the same thinner that I used to mix up the paint to clean it out. So I just put it in there, sloshed it all around, and then sprayed it out. Did that a couple times. So anyway, hopefully the paint turns out good. We'll find out in a week.